My name is Erin Maddox. I was 16 when I stopped being seen as a daughter and started being treated like staff. They didn't call me by name, not when it counted. In that house, I was the helper, not legally, not officially, just unofficially responsible for every dish that piled up, every sock left on the stairs, every mess Delia made and refused to acknowledge. Lorna, my stepmother, once told a guest I was just staying with them for a bit, like I'd been dropped off by accident. I moved in at 14 after my mother left. By 16, I understood I wasn't family. I was furniture with a pulse. My bedroom was the laundry room. No window, no lock, just a cot wedged between detergent shelves and the back of a humming dryer. They called it temporary for 4 years. I called it a warning. They made rules that only applied to me. Delia could come and go as she pleased. I had a 9 o'clock curfew. She got allowances for essentials, hair appointments, concert tickets, tanning packages. I was told I should be thankful we had soap. "You're not technically our responsibility," Lorna said once, slicing grapefruit like it was a form of power. "But we're being kind." Kindness wasn't what I called it. Kindness wasn't Delia calling me floor girl in front of her friends. It wasn't Lorna asking me to use the back door when guests came over, so things don't get confusing. And it wasn't my father quietly refilling his coffee as I cleared plates I didn't eat off of. He wasn't abusive, just absent, like a lamp that worked fine until you needed it in the dark. I stopped asking for help after the third time he said, "Just focus on your goals, Erin. It's better not to stir things up." My goal had been college, not for a name or a future degree. I didn't believe in fantasy. I believed in escape. My mother, before she left, started a small fund. I checked it obsessively. $18,432.70. I kept the paperwork in a plastic sleeve under a loose floorboard. That money was mine. Not much, but mine. A way out. A number I whispered to myself on nights I couldn't sleep. It was Delia's birthday when everything changed. She got a silver convertible wrapped in a ribbon and 2 catered parties, one for family, one for friends. I spent the day washing champagne flutes and wiping cupcake icing off rental chairs. That night, I heard Lorna on the phone. "Of course we're not using the college money on her," she laughed. "That's for Delia's car, the good one. Erin can figure herself out. You don't reward someone just for mopping floors." I didn't sleep. I waited until the house was quiet, logged into the account from the dusty desktop in the hallway, and checked the balance. 0. Not just 0. Emptied 3 weeks earlier, the same week the car appeared. When I brought it up the next morning, Lorna didn't flinch. She took a sip of her tea and said, "It's not like you had a plan. And Delia needs the car for school. You weren't going anywhere." She said it like it was gravity. Delia, across the table, didn't look up from her phone. "You should be grateful," she added. "Some people don't even get to live with family." I turned to my father. He rubbed his temple like the noise was giving him a headache. That was the moment I stopped being invisible and became absent. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I walked into the laundry room, zipped up my backpack, and left out the back door. No note, no noise, no slamming. Some exits don't need to be dramatic. Some exits are a warning. I slept in a bus station that night, then a break room, then someone's couch. I worked for cash under the table. I scrubbed things that weren't mine. Ate food that didn't fill me. I stopped using my last name, because if I didn't belong to them, then I didn't owe them anything. And if I didn't belong anywhere, then I was free to go everywhere. There was no plan. Just a backpack, $43, and the kind of silence that grows roots in your chest. I didn't call anyone. I didn't leave a note. I just left. The first night, I slept on the bench outside the Crosswinds bus station. It rained sometime around 3 a.m. I curled my knees up, pulled my hood over my face, and stayed perfectly still, like not moving could keep me from being noticed. It worked. The next few days blurred. I took the jobs no one wanted, sweeping behind gas stations, wiping down gym floors after hours, folding towels at a laundromat for $5 under the table. I told people my name was M, just M. I didn't want anyone looking me up or calling the house I wasn't welcome in. When the supply closet at the gym stayed unlocked one night, I slept there. Then I kept coming back, pretending I was just cleaning late. After a week, the janitor, an older man named Mr. Heller, started leaving extra granola bars near the mop sink without saying anything. He was the first person who didn't ask questions. "You're quiet," he said once, without judgment. I shrugged. "I pay attention." He nodded like that was a real answer. One night, while cleaning the upper floors, I found him reading a lease document under a flickering hallway light. It was for a rental unit across town. He was renewing, said he'd been living in that building for 12 years. "That's rare," I said. He glanced at me. "You don't lose your place if you understand the system better than the people running it." That sentence stuck. He started letting me help with tenant calls, unclogging drains, filing complaints. I watched him repair water heaters and deal with owners who lived 2 states away. Most of them didn't care what condition the place was in, as long as the rent cleared. I started learning. Landlords weren't gods. Most were lazy, over-leveraged, or distracted. Some were afraid of their own buildings. The good ones, the quiet ones, they lasted. One morning at 4:40 a.m., I found a folder labeled Licensing Fees, Metro County, in the supply cabinet. I read every page. Then I found another, Code Violations, Unit Number 12. Heller noticed. He didn't stop me. "You learn fast," he said. "I remember things that matter," I replied. When a unit flooded from a busted pipe, I helped move out a single mom and her daughter. She was crying. She thought she was going to lose her deposit. Heller told her quietly, "Document everything. Take photos. Don't yell." That stuck too. I started keeping a notebook, maintenance costs, how long it took certain water heaters to die, what mold looked like under vinyl, how much landlords charged for broken blinds. By the time I turned 19, I knew how to calculate rental profit margins better than the guy who owned the entire building. But I wasn't part of it. I was still sleeping on folded blankets, hoarding instant noodles, and washing my hair in the staff shower. I wasn't poor. I was invisible. And invisibility is its own kind of shelter. One day, a tenant named Nadia offered me a sandwich while I was scrubbing graffiti off the mailboxes. I said no, but she left it anyway. "Looks like you need it more than I do," she said. I didn't eat it. I stared at it for an hour. Then I wrote her unit number down and made sure her maintenance requests always came first. It wasn't kindness. It was control. Quiet control. The kind I never had before. A few months later, I used a fake name to sign up for a city workshop on renter-to-owner pathways. It was a 3-hour session, and I barely spoke. But I left with a stack of pamphlets and a contact for a nonprofit that helped low-income applicants get certified as resident managers. No one knew I went, not even Heller. I got certified 6 months later, The certificate wasn't framed. I folded it into the notebook with my rental notes and taped it shut with packing tape. I didn't celebrate. There was no one to tell. But I had something now, a credential, a number, a foothold. And from there, I started climbing. The first key I held wasn't for anything I owned. It belonged to Unit 2B of the Stratmore Complex, a rusting 4-story box with peeling brown paint and a busted mailbox panel held shut with duct tape. Heller gave it to me on a Thursday. No ceremony. Just slid it across the break room table between a bag of powdered donuts and his worn-out notepad. "They're short-staffed again," he muttered. "Owner's niece got evicted. You can do a better job." No one asked for references. No one asked for ID. I was just the one who showed up. Quiet, early, reliable. For the first time, I didn't have to sleep in a closet. I moved into the unit the same night. No lease, no furniture. Just a mattress on the floor, a milk crate for a table, and a fan that hummed like a confession. It was paradise. There was no Lorna, no Delia, no snide remarks about earning your keep, no secondhand perfume choking the hallway, just silence and the sound of my own lock clicking shut at night. I cleaned apartments that weren't mine, replaced fixtures I couldn't afford, and made spreadsheets on the communal office computer, rent cycles, utility turnover, vacancy loss patterns. I still had that notebook. It was thicker now, full of diagrams, printed screenshots, old lease clauses I copied word for word. I studied tenant protection ordinances like other people watch TV. I marked every trick, the illegal fees, the quiet evictions, the security deposit games. And I watched the owners. They never showed up in person. They sent checks and threats. Half of them were realtors who bought the buildings in foreclosure auctions and forgot about them. I met one once. She was in her 20s, wore heels too high to walk on cracked pavement, and called the place my little tax write-off. She didn't remember my name. That was fine. I remembered hers. By the time I turned 20, I was the unofficial manager of 2 buildings, one I lived in and one I didn't. I filed reports under someone else's login. I coordinated pest control and emergency plumbing. I wrote emails in a tone that wasn't mine. Polite, clipped, harmless. No one questioned it. They just wanted the problems solved. I still lived like I was about to be kicked out. My fridge never had more than 2 days' worth of food. I reused every paper clip. I wore the same pair of shoes for 3 years. Frugality wasn't a virtue. It was insurance. Eventually, I found a classified ad from a man named Feldman. He was selling 3 duplexes off-market. Needed the cash to cover medical expenses. I called from a burner phone. Asked questions I already knew the answers to. Took a bus 3 hours to tour them. Clipboard in hand, pretending to represent a client. They were disasters. Moldavian rot, bad plumbing. But they were cheap. And I didn't care about ugly. I cared about leverage. I pooled every dollar I had. Took out a microloan through a city program. Lied about having a guarantor. Used someone else's old LLC paperwork as a template. 2 months later, I signed my name on a dotted line that no one read carefully enough. The LLC name was generic, Northgate Holdings. My name wasn't on anything public. No paper trail, just a P.O. box and a prepaid phone number. The sellers shook my hand, called me kid. That was fine. I wasn't interested in being seen. I was interested in owning something no one could take from me. The first rent check came through the old mail slot 3 weeks later. It was addressed to Northgate Holdings in shaky handwriting. I opened it with a knife and stared at the numbers for a long time. $1,200. It wasn't much, but it was more than my father ever gave me. More than Lorna thought I'd earn in a month. More than Delia had probably saved in her entire life. I deposited it, quietly, without emotion. Then I took the receipt, folded it into my notebook, and highlighted the word paid. There was no celebration, no champagne, no announcement, just a key and silence. And for the first time in my life, that silence was mine. I didn't speak much in those years. When I did, it was calculated, measured, functional. Words cost something. And I wasn't giving anything away for free. The world listens more when you don't expect it to. People talk around silence like it's a sinkhole they need to fill. In those gaps, I learned things about leverage, about access, about how much power people hand over when they don't think you're important enough to remember. The first thing I built was a credit score. No applause, no advisors, no co-signer, just a $250 secured card I got from a neighborhood credit union, under a borrowed address and a prepaid phone number. I used it to buy bleach, caulk, garbage bags, paid it off every week, never missed. I kept the receipts in a Ziploc bag under my mattress. One line of credit became two, then three, small, harmless, unremarkable. I didn't want attention. I wanted presence, data, a digital footprint that said, this person exists, even if no one claims her. At 20, I could calculate compound interest faster than most loan officers, not because I was smart, but because I had nothing to waste. I kept my overhead microscopic. No car, no subscriptions, no alcohol. I wore black so I wouldn't have to sort laundry. I never turned on the oven. My fridge held rice, vinegar, and eggs. The rest of my energy went toward building what no one thought I'd touch: equity. People like Lorna only believe in things they can prove to others. A new handbag, a college bumper sticker, a daughter who looks good in photos. People like me, we don't believe in appearances. We believe in proof of ownership. I started volunteering for housing clinics, tenant workshops, not for charity, though that's what they assumed. I kept my head down and took notes. I didn't speak unless it was to ask how something worked. I studied rent caps, habitability clauses, legal loopholes for 60-day notices. I never said I was a landlord. I said I was interested. They called me motivated. I called it infiltration. One woman in a clinic gave me her contact for a legal advocacy group. I took her number, never called. But I looked up the filings she mentioned. Every time a landlord got sued for mold, for gas leaks, for eviction without cause, I tracked it, printed it, logged it. I had a manila folder labeled "The Things They Got Away With." It grew thicker than any textbook I'd ever owned. I watched other people chase status while I hunted silence. Delia posted filtered photos of brunches with captions about manifesting abundance. Lorna joined networking brunches for women in real estate, while 3 of her tenants filed complaints about leaking pipes. I tracked their social lives like financial records, because in time, they'd become records. The walls between my life and theirs weren't just symbolic. They were structural. One side built on entitlement, the other on blueprints and bad lighting, and 3 a.m. emergency calls. But I was learning how to walk through walls. Eventually, I started managing 3 properties, all owned by different people, all neglected. I didn't ask for raises. I asked for access, logins, leases, vendor contracts. I didn't want their trust. I wanted their systems. By 21, I had the full picture. Who defaulted? Who was late? Which HVAC companies faked their warranties? Which tenants were being overcharged for pet rent, despite not having pets. I wasn't trying to fix the industry. I was building the blueprint for the one I'd own. I lived in silence, but my record screamed. My income looked modest on paper, but my savings rate would have embarrassed an investment banker. I reinvested everything, never looked back. I didn't celebrate because I didn't believe in arrival. I believed in quiet progression. I bought my third property through an estate sale. The seller never knew I was the buyer. The name on the LLC was Carbon Vale, registered through a legal Zoom clone with a Nevada address. My fingerprints were gone, but my grip was tightening. I started walking neighborhoods differently, not like a tenant, not like an intruder, but like an analyst. Which fences were rotting, which windows had bars, which trash bins were overfilled, which buildings were being bled dry by distant owners who forgot that time and mold will do the work for them. I found a fourplex on Sycamore Drive with code violations, spoke to the handyman, offered him $100 to tell me what the landlord hadn't fixed. He told me everything. I gave him cash, then offered him a new job, under me. He said yes. People don't care who you are when you pay on time. Once I saw that pattern, I replicated it. I bought pain, cleaned it, leased it, reinforced it, and held it. The people who ignored me taught me how to manage them. Lorna taught me how to polish something toxic for public display. Delia taught me how to smile while stepping on someone else's throat. My father taught me what happens when you don't stand up for anything. I learned. I documented. And then I built a world where they'd need permission to exist. I drove by their house once more. It was still standing, but limping. Yard overgrown. Roof sagging. A foreclosure notice taped to the glass. I didn't feel joy, just data, just confirmation that erosion was working. I went home to my own building, walked past units where tenants played music, burned dinner, laughed too loud. None of them knew the girl who used to sleep beside a washing machine. And I never told them, because silence isn't just something I survived. It's what I weaponized. The first time I turned a key and walked into something I owned, it didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet. The air was stale, the floor uneven, the walls needed paint, and the toilet didn't flush right. But no one could tell me to leave. No one could take it back. It was a small duplex I bought under an anonymous holding company. I didn't put my name on anything public. I wasn't after recognition. I was after control. I stood in the living room alone. No furniture, no heat, just concrete floors and a cracked window. I didn't post a photo. I didn't send a text. I just locked the door behind me and sat on the floor to think. I own this place. It was mine. No one gave it to me. No one co-signed. No one said good job. I used money I'd saved from managing other people's problems. I negotiated directly with the seller. I closed fast, paid below market. The owner didn't ask questions. He just wanted out. I didn't tell him I used to sleep in a laundry room. I started the rehab the same night, ripped up the old carpet by hand, sprayed for mold, patched the drywall with a borrowed toolkit. I bought materials in cash from discount warehouses, hauled everything myself. No contractors, no crew. My hands bled, my back ached. I didn't stop. By day I handled complaints for other landlords, fixed leaky faucets, filed tenant paperwork. By night, I rebuilt my own property in silence. I used a plastic chair and a milk crate as a workbench. My dinner was rice and canned beans. I slept on a rolled-up blanket under the window. It wasn't luxury, but it was mine. The first tenant moved in 2 weeks later. A nurse, polite, quiet. She paid rent early and didn't ask who owned the place. She assumed I was just the manager. I didn't correct her. Tenants trust quiet managers more than they trust ambitious landlords. I let her believe whatever made her feel safe. I filed the lease, logged the payment, and folded the deposit slip into a binder I kept under the sink. No one knew what that binder meant. No one knew it was my proof of survival. That first rent check wasn't large, but it was real, and it was clean. No charity, no shortcuts. Delia would have spent it on shoes. Lorna would have called it petty cash. I used it to repaint the kitchen. Then I started saving again. By the end of that year, I owned 3 more doors. One building was falling apart. Another had a broken gate. The third had rats. I didn't care. Ugly buildings don't scare me. Pretty ones used to hurt me. I kept everything off social media. I didn't celebrate milestones. I wasn't trying to inspire anyone. I was building something no one could trace until it was too late. I drove by their house once, Lorna's, the one I used to mop in. It looked smaller, weeds in the yard, a cracked driveway, the porch sagging under cheap plastic furniture. No renovations, just slow decay. I parked down the street and stared at it from behind the tinted window of a car I didn't list under my name. I thought about the way Delia used to toss her keys at me and say, "Wash it, inside and out, don't scratch the paint." I remembered her convertible, bought with my college fund. That same week, I created a new folder in my business documents. I called it Target Residential Reacquisition. The title was for me. No one else would ever see it. Inside, I printed a copy of their property record, mortgage history, tax status. I highlighted missed payments. Then I added a photo of their front door. I didn't need revenge yet. I just needed the map. I went back to my duplex, changed a light bulb, answered a tenant's maintenance request, replaced a broken cabinet hinge myself. This was the work Lorna looked down on, the work Delia mocked, the work my father never defended. But I wasn't trying to prove them wrong. I was trying to prove them irrelevant. The next morning, I opened my laptop and made a new column in my spreadsheet. Net passive income, $1,942.57. I didn't smile. I didn't react. I just entered the number and closed the file. I wasn't supposed to see them again, but people like Lorna never downsize quietly. The listing came through a property manager I worked with once. Small talk over cheap coffee. A shared contractor, nothing personal. He mentioned a mother and daughter looking for something affordable, not too far from the Ridgeview schools. Said they were polite, but obviously stressed. Claimed they lost their last house due to bad refinancing. The address on the inquiry caught my eye. Delia, Lorna, different email, different last name, but the same tone. The same request for safe neighborhoods with a certain image, the same assumption that someone else would solve the fallout of their decisions. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit for a day, then 2. Then I checked the property they were asking about. It was one of mine. Technically, it belonged to Maddox Fold Holdings, LLC. But I chose the name for a reason. It was a single-story duplex in a quiet neighborhood. Neutral exterior, freshly rehabbed, new flooring, new light fixtures. It had cost me 3 years of slow acquisition and silence to buy, but I never posted about it, never even visited during daylight. I didn't need to be seen. I needed to be in position. I drafted the lease myself. Standard terms, no hints, no games. I removed all personal contact from the application, just the management number, just the address, just a form like any other. They toured the place on a Tuesday. I watched from the end of the block. Delia's hair was shorter. died lighter, but the same swing in her step, the same restless entitlement in her shoulders. Lorna wore oversized sunglasses and a scarf, like life had become a theater, and she still insisted on starring. Neither of them looked at the unit like it was a blessing. They looked at it like it owed them something. I let them sign, didn't fast-track it, didn't delay it, just processed them like tenants. They moved in 2 weeks later. The irony didn't bother me. They had no idea the person who once folded their laundry now held the deed to their front door. I kept my distance, let them settle, let them believe. They painted the living room beige, hung curtains, posted filtered photos of the space online like it was a dream they'd fought for. I printed those photos, filed them under occupant perception. Delia and Lorna, they paid rent on time, at first, then late, then later. 3 months in, I issued a standard warning. No emotion, no commentary, just a typed letter. Rent is past due. If payment is not received within 10 days, further action will be taken. I knew Lorna's reaction before she opened the envelope. Outrage, confusion, the performance of insulted dignity. She emailed the generic address listed in the lease, complained about the tone, asked for leniency, claimed she'd been a loyal tenant. I let the auto response handle her. 2 days later, a partial payment came in. $400 short, no explanation. I applied the funds to the oldest charges, sent another notice. This time, I included a breakdown. Clean, cold, precise. Lorna stopped emailing. Delia started instead. Her message was informal, rambling, full of ellipses and passive phrasing. She said her mom was overwhelmed, asked if we could just hit reset and forget the mix-up. I responded with a copy of the ledger and a reminder. Late fees accumulate per lease terms. Payment due in full by the end of the month. The next week, I posted a 30-day notice to vacate on their door. I did it myself. No assistant, no property rep, just me. Delia opened the door halfway through. She looked at me and froze. The recognition didn't come all at once. It came in pieces. First the shape of my face, then the silence, then the fact that I was holding a clipboard instead of a mop. "Erin," she said, like the name tasted foreign in her mouth. Her voice cracked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She looked down at the notice, then back at me. "Wait, this can't be right. This." Lorna appeared behind her, wrapped in a blanket, eyes bleary. When she saw me, she blinked twice, then once more. Her voice, when it came, was smaller than I remembered. "You're the one managing this place." I handed her the copy of the ledger. "I'm the one who owns it," I said. Silence. Not the kind they used to use to ignore me. The kind that crushes everything it used to protect. Delia looked like she wanted to argue. Lorna looked like she wanted to vanish. I didn't give them time for either. "I gave you 30 days, I said. "That's more than you gave me." Then I turned and walked down the steps. No smile, no smirk, no rush, just gravity pulling me forward while they stood still. They didn't leave right away. Tenants never do when the reality doesn't fit the version of life they rehearsed. Delia stalled with vague promises. Lorna left voicemails full of shaky dignity. "We're working on it. You don't have to be cruel. We're family." I didn't respond to any of them. They were renters. I was the landlord. That was the relationship. And I honored it, exactly the way they taught me to. I sent a second notice, standard format, simple language. Remaining balance must be paid. 30 days remain before legal action is filed. I didn't threaten. I documented. They stopped calling after that, but they didn't stop pretending. Delia posted a photo on social media 2 weeks later. Her and Lorna on the front steps, fake smiles, cupcakes, a caption about fresh starts and stronger bonds. I screenshotted it, added it to their file, because I remembered every Sunday night I spent mopping that very porch while they hosted their book club. I remembered every time Lorna asked me to stay upstairs when Delia had guests. I remembered watching from a dark stairwell as they opened wine I wasn't allowed to touch and talked about me like I was background noise. Now they were the noise, and I was holding the microphone. I gave them no further warnings. On day 28, I filed the paperwork, a notice to vacate, legally processed, properly delivered. I paid extra to have it taped to the door before sunrise. I didn't do it out of spite. I did it for symmetry. They used to wake me up before dawn to prepare their brunches. Now I returned the favor, quietly. On day 29, Delia called from a different number. She didn't leave a message. On day 30, I changed the locks. They weren't home. I had the right. I followed every procedure they never cared to learn. The unit was still full of their things: makeup, jackets, a curling iron, a shoebox of receipts they probably meant to organize. I didn't touch anything. I called the removal team, scheduled a third-party storage pickup, filed every receipt under their name. Lorna used to say I had no attention to detail. Now my paperwork had more precision than their credit history. When they came back, I was waiting. I stood on the sidewalk, no expression, clipboard in hand. Delia stormed toward me first. "You can't do this," she hissed. "You don't get to." I handed her a copy of the timeline, application, lease, rent ledger, first notice, final notice, court filing, all dated, all legal, all clean. Lorna stood further back, quiet, pale, holding a tote bag like it might anchor her. Delia scanned the pages, then threw them back at me. "You're not even qualified for this. You're just bitter." "No," I said flatly. "I'm just better at remembering what was owed." They stood there for a long time, waiting for me to blink, to soften. I didn't. Lorna finally spoke. "You could have warned us." I met her eyes. "You warned me every day." With silence, with smirks, with every meal you never let me sit down for. She looked away. "Good." Delia crossed her arms. "You think this makes you powerful?" "No," I said. "It makes me permanent." They didn't understand what that meant. They didn't need to. I walked back to my car and left them there, on the sidewalk, outside a house that no longer took their names seriously. I didn't look back. I'd already seen enough of their backs growing up. Later that week, I had the unit deep cleaned. No trace of perfume. No foundation on the bathroom counter. No glimmer of the golden daughter or her mother's careful narrative. Just space, neutral, ready for someone who paid what they owed. I gave them everything they ever gave me. No welcome, no apology, no closure. Just a clean exit and a locked door. Eviction isn't loud. It's silent, legal, and final. After I changed the locks, they tried to claw their way back. Lorna sent a letter, handwritten, full of guilt, dressed up as concern. She said I was overreacting, that she tried her best, that I once lived in her home. I filed it, didn't reply. Delia didn't bother writing. She posted a story about being betrayed by someone bitter. No names, just passive aggression and curated lighting. I screenshotted it, labeled it for my records. Then I listed the unit again. I showed it myself. A woman with a quiet son toured the space. She asked about schools, utilities, and if I allowed pets. I said yes. She applied the next day. I approved her the day after. I never mentioned who lived there before, because it didn't matter, not anymore. The eviction wasn't about vengeance. It was about reversal. They once locked me out of family dinners. Now I lock them out of housing, legally, cleanly, and without raising my voice. They thought they were still the authors of the story. They didn't realize I'd taken the pen. The notice wasn't a warning. It was a fact. This door no longer opened for them. Delia showed up at my office 3 weeks after the eviction. Not the main office, not the one with signage or staff. The quiet one I used when I didn't want to be seen. Just a converted unit above one of the first buildings I ever bought. Unlabeled buzzer, no front desk. She must have followed a name on a lease or looked up the LLC records. She didn't expect to see me when I opened the door. Her face twisted when she realized I wasn't a receptionist. "You," she said. "Of course." I stepped aside and let her in. No warmth, no small talk. She didn't sit. "I just want to understand something," she said, arms folded. "Why now? Why like this?" I didn't answer. I watched her circle the room. Her posture said confidence. Her voice said panic. "You could have called," she added. "We're not monsters. You didn't have to humiliate us." I raised one eyebrow. She caught it, flinched. "You know what I mean," she said. This was about revenge. "No," I said. "It was about remembering." Delia looked at me like I was speaking another language. I was, one she never learned, the language of consequence. She glanced at the paperwork on my desk, a lease renewal for someone else, a name she didn't recognize. That bothered her. "You're really doing this?" she asked. "This whole slumlord persona?" That word told me she still hadn't changed. That behind the eyeliner and desperation, she still believed I was below her. "You're just the help," she added quietly. "You always have been." I nodded. "That's what Lorna said when she drained my college fund," I replied. "Funny, she never paid it back." Delia's mouth opened, then closed. I stood up, slowly, not to intimidate, just to make the space feel smaller. "You didn't come here to ask questions," I said. "You came here to feel less powerless." "I came here because you evicted us," she snapped. "Like strangers." I didn't blink. "You were never family." She went quiet then. Not because she agreed, because she finally understood I meant it. I walked to the door and opened it. She didn't move. "This doesn't make you better," she said, eyes sharp. "It makes you bitter." I looked at her for a long time. Then I said calmly, "It makes me the owner." She left without another word. I closed the door behind her, slowly, cleanly, no slam. Just like the night I left their house. Some exits don't need sound, just finality. They never reached out again. No calls, no letters, no last attempt to rewrite the story. Delia's silence was louder than anything she'd ever said. The unit was cleaned, repainted, leased out again. This time to a retired couple who paid early and said thank you. I gave them everything I was never given: respect, stability, peace. I drove past the house I grew up in one last time. The lawn was dead, the windows covered. A foreclosure notice hung sideways from the door. It didn't look like a memory. It looked like an ending. That house used to hold everything that broke me. Now it held nothing. They said I was just the help, that I wasn't part of the family, that I should be grateful for scraps. Now they rent motels, and I hold deeds. I walked one of my buildings that afternoon, checked light fixtures, answered tenant emails, signed off on repairs. Just another day. I still keep the lease they signed, blind to my name. I keep the eviction notice too, filed, not framed. I don't need trophies. I just need records. They erased me from their story, so I wrote my own ending. The house is quiet now, and I don't live in it. I own it, and I never need to go back.